to the Open Air Podcast. My name is Devang and Simon. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bush. Oh, Bush, I'm only slightly annoyed by the current surroundings that are happening right now. Slightly because England has come back from the precipice. I was ready to read a lot of hilarious articles, but England has found a way, sir. How are you doing?
Well, you say that. We'll see. Never certain with this team. I'm doing all right, thank you. It's been a challenging couple of weeks from a sporting perspective from my side of things since the last time we spoke to you, but I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, a lot has happened. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, some technical difficulties as well. So if I'm sounding a bit different, apologies for that. I know we haven't been around for a couple of weeks as well. The energies are weird and different, I will admit, as we get this podcast going, but Wimbledon is on the horizon, Simon, so we had to link up again to talk about that. I am laughing, though, that usually when we record on Sundays, we're at the mercy of whatever these tournaments end and like when they're scheduled. But for once, it is an England-Slovakia Euro game. And then technical difficulties that have pushed us deep. But it's Wimbledon. Do you feel ready for this? Do you feel ready for this major?
I do, yeah. I think it's been a fun few weeks since we've been off. There's been a ton of grass court tennis, and there's been some fun stuff to watch and to unpack. I think it's definitely the most open Wimbledon draw on both the men's and women's side in decades, I would say. There's no clear-cut favorite on either side. So I think that's what makes it an interesting and intriguing draw. And I think the storylines over the last week have set us up for a nice conversation about what could potentially be happening on the grass courts at SW19.
Well said. I mean, since we last spoke to you after the French Open, the grass court season kind of kicked into hyperdrive, as it's not very long, as we all know. But just looking at some of the people who came out on top in these tournaments, Simon, it's a who's who of those that you would kind of expect to have success on the grass courts, and then some people who maybe not. Some people who maybe you're like, okay, they've got something here. I'm thinking maybe of someone like Bianca Andreescu, who made the final in the Netherlands in June, or even someone like Jess Figula, who really rallied in Berlin to take that title against Anna Kalinskaya. But on the men's side, Simon, I mean, we can go back to the women, but I look at Jack Draper, I look at, Tommy Paul as well, and I look at Jannik Sinner, all having strong lead-up weeks into Wimbledon. Did anyone catch your eye in particular?
I think Jack Draper did, for a myriad of reasons, of course. The thirst was very strong, of course, still for him. But perhaps the most intriguing player on the men's side of things is Jannik Sinner. How much is the body holding up? He looked fine in spells in Halle, winning that title. I mentioned a few minutes ago that there's no clear-cut favorite. I think if you had to select one person, it probably would be Sinner being the world number one going into this major. There's so many question marks out there, though, not least how fit is he? That's
the biggest one, right? How fit is anyone? How fit is the 7-time champion of this tournament? How fit is Carlos Alcaraz, who, I mean, by all accounts, should be okay to go and is coming off an epic win last year at this tournament. But I am with you. I don't feel comfortable necessarily anointing anyone as the clear favorite, even though after looking at the draw, some people have easier paths than others. I think for me, like that Sinner Alcaraz potential semifinal is tantalizing, but I'd be pretty surprised if both of them made it there. Do you think that's fair?
I don't know that it is, actually. I think I would pick both of them to get to that semi-final, despite how challenging. And that section of the draw, I think you rightly alluded to, for Sinner is really tough, really, really challenging, actually. One of the more challenging sides of the draw I've seen in a while. But I think they're both good enough, and I think they're both head and shoulders above the field in terms of their ability to get there. It's just whether or not their bodies are holding up to well enough to get to that stage. But I would still pick them to get to the semi-final.
I don't know. Maybe I'm still banking on that grass court craziness and the fact that I feel like Wimbledon is good for these early round upsets. I don't have actual data to back that up, but it's mostly vibes. I don't know if you feel the same, but it's just the grass court boogeymen. That's fair. And like, even if you do look at like Berrettini in the second round and be like, well, that's going to be tough. Like he should come through that. Yannick. I mean, health dependent, but that is not easy. That is kind of weird to have a match of that stature that early on against a countryman. I think for Alcaraz is maybe a little more straightforward in his section, and then you're looking at maybe Tommy Paul in the quarterfinals or Casper Ruud. Let's stick on the men then before we get to the women. Novak Djokovic. There are conversations, whispers, conspiracies, as there tend to be around him. But regarding the knee surgery that may or may not have happened, I've seen him practicing at Wimbledon. He's put in the draw. So is Andy Murray. Do you think Novak A had surgery and B will he play, Simon? Which seems like a crazy thing to lead with, but do you think the surgery happened?
What is it that I messaged you during the course of the week that one of his shamans talked at his knee for an hour? That was the extent of the surgery which happened. I'm, of course, joking. Almost certainly he had surgery. Whether or not it's enough to, or he's far enough along in his recovery that he's going to have a chance of winning this tournament. The noise is out of the camp, and you can say what you like because the noises out of the camp are almost all bollocks most of the time. But in this situation, they are making all the positive noises and suggesting that he's got a chance of not just participating, but running deep. And I think he said during the course of the week that he was confident of playing in this tournament on the basis that he wouldn't enter it if he didn't think he had a chance of winning it. I'm not sure I would bet against a 7-time winner of this tournament going deep in it. At the same time, he's not looked particularly right all season. And throwing a recently recovered from a surgery, I would be very surprised if he makes a deep run here, just given everything that's coming out.
The darkest corners of tennis Twitter have really picked up the ball and ran with this. And I think I'm with you in the sense that I think he did have surgery. I think the Serbian Olympic president is the one who claims potentially that he didn't have surgery. But yeah, let's go with the benefit of the doubt here. And I do think like this seems nuts to me to rush it, but I also think he's obsessed with getting eighth. And I also think like Wimbledon, it maybe more so than the other majors, it helps if you know the track. And if you do know the track, it gives you a leg up, maybe in some situations that other places wouldn't offer you. Like if he trots out to the US Open on one leg, he's probably going to be bludgeoned quickly. Whereas at Wimbledon, maybe he can feel himself into the tournament. So I'm with you. I think he's a threat. He's definitely a threat here, but I have no idea if he's actually going to play. So I feel like that's the issue here. I mean, do you have any issue with Andy Murray getting a spot? Bush, it seems like his status is doubtful as well.
Well, I feel like we've been so much on the horse of suggesting that it's fine that he takes wild cards and it's fine that he continues to play. Yeah. That would be quite the turnaround for us to start shitting on him now. I think with that being said, it would be sad if he doesn't get to play at this tournament one last time in a singles draw. So I'm kind of hopeful that he does play. I'm far more skeptical that he plays than Novak Djokovic, though. But we'll know very shortly. By the time you listen to this, you'll know the answer to that.
It's fascinating. I think the idea he's going to decide Monday evening British time. So it's cutting it close. And I think the other aspect is like he wants to play with his brother. He wants to play doubles. Maybe he sacrifices the singles to play with his brother. Who knows? Yeah, Milos Raonic didn't get a wild card for this either, Bush, which I feel like it's not worth getting angry about this because the slams do this, and the slams in general kind of control the power. It really reminds me of the International Cricket Committee, but that's maybe I'll save that for parting shots. 2 challenges remaining time, but like the control is there. The wild cards are there. They're handing out to certain people. I know Murray's definitely not included in this, but like people like Milos Raonic, I think for their body of work should have been rewarded with the main draw wild card. But like for Murray, it's awkward. He shouldn't be punished for the horrible reporting around the story and what came out initially after he first suffered this latest injury a few weeks ago. So like it's not his fault that the ATP said he was out when he wasn't. But it does make for a situation where I hope it's not like a herd catch Federer. The man is like just limping around getting bagelled. Like nobody wants that, right? And I don't think he does either. So he wouldn't play if it was that like that. That's the other thing that I would hope.
I can see a situation where he plays the doubles and pulls out of the singles. I can
Yeah,
definitely see that
yeah.
happening just from a storyline perspective. But I think it's going to be a fun draw all in all. There's enough fun storylines on the men's side that we will have a good 2 weeks.
On the women's side, I mentioned some of the names, but I do want to kind of zero in on a couple. Bianca looked good. She looked good on grass. I think this is someone we've talked about as well, Simon, who has the game to do well on grass. It really is now a question of like Bianca getting back into some sort of rhythm and repetition, and you see glimpses like the Naomi Osaka match a few weeks ago, and you're like, holy shit, like it's there, it's right there. But the loss in the final doesn't kind of rain on the idea that I think she can definitely cause problems at this tournament.
I completely agree with you. I think this is actually her best chance of running deep in a major again. I think she has a game that's very suited to playing on grass. And I mean, clearly she has the pedigree to run deep in tournaments, not just run deep, but win tournaments. So her career arc is going to be fascinating to look at, to see how the latter half of her career unfolds, just given how quickly and how suddenly she arrived on the scene. She was like lightning in a bottle, and then it sort of fizzled a little bit. I do think there's going to be a bit of a renaissance, especially on grass. I can see her doing well here.
Potentially in the third round against Jessica Paolini, I think that could be quite electric. So Bianca is doing well recently. Emma Raducanu, Bush, first win over a top 10 player who was Jess Pegula. But again, like nothing about that US Open run was like normal or something that we've seen before. But the fact that this was her first top 10 win shows how kind of backwards her career achievements have kind of been. She's normalizing winning regular matches, which is all we ask for. She looks quite good too.
She really does. I think if you were interested in outside betting or you wanted to make an inflammatory statement about something, I would circle the name Emma Raducanu to do something at this Wimbledon. And I mean, make a deep run as well. Like, she's really good on the surface. And there's not many women at the top of the game that you can say who feel really comfortable on the grass in a way that she does. And she's not been healthy in a while on this surface. And the one time that we actually did get to see her playing on it consistently, she ran really deep. So it may seem ridiculous to suggest that she has a chance of doing something quite special here, but I actually think she might do.
They need England to stay in this tournament as long as possible so that the press can't go insane over education as it goes. They need to take the shrapnel that is the idiocy. We had this conversation in the Discord, like whether people would be normal about Emma Raducanu being good again. I don't think they will be, but it'll be really cool to see her back. And it's no small thing, I think, that the way we were speaking about the coaching changes and the just like the up and down last couple of years and the idea of like stepping away from tennis and then dealing with injuries. Like, it's not a given at all to come back. Whenever we see this, and I put Bianca in this group as well, I really, really, I marvel at it, which gets like, how hard is that? How hard is that to start again at maybe not the lowest you feel, but the lowest in terms of ranking it and regroup. And the people that have been able to do it, they have that extra level of mental strength that I think you see shine through. So I wonder if there's an extra level of armor for Emma Raducanu now, and that she's been through this.
I think it's all about expectation, isn't it? Of what the player, both from an outside perspective and also internally inside of the camp and the player's perspective of what your expectations for success are. Because I think how we view success for Emma Raducanu might be very different than how she views it. The same way for Bianca Andreescu, Leilani Fernandez as well. The list is quite long. A lot of Canadians on that list, it has to be said. But I think if we are constantly suggesting that these players are going to run very deep at majors and they're not doing so, I think that perhaps is more a reflection of the fact that we're not analyzing them correctly, is that they're not that player anymore. Or maybe never really were that player, or perhaps we overvalued or overrated them in some capacity. All that is to say, I am really, really curious about this tournament because it's the first time in a long time where if you were to tell me that two players ranked outside of the top 10 of the men's and women's won this tournament, or you got surprise winners on both sides, I'd 100% believe it. I think this is the most open, and I think it has the most chance for shock winners on both sides that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, Sabalenka's got a bit of a shoulder problem. Marketa Vondrousova, who won last year, also has an injury problem. Elena Rybakina pulled out of a match recently. She's been dealing with injuries. And then there's Iga, who some people are making it sound like she's never seen grass before, but she's played at Wimbledon. The expectations that you talked about,
She won the juniors.
yeah, but and perhaps this is good for her, but it doesn't seem like, or it doesn't feel like people are super confident and circling that Kenin match to start with as something to watch, which I don't know, it's a bit jarring because Iga at a slam, just most recently, you're not supposed to watch these early ones because they're going to be a bludgeoning, but it feels like it's going to be on from the first ball played against Kenin.
I have absolutely no idea if Iga Swiatek is going to win this tournament. It's such a fascinating story to watch because, yeah, she could lose early or she could easily win the tournament. I think that's the cool thing about this tournament, is it not? And the surface is that the expectations that you put on players normally to go into tournaments kind of get turned on their head. And there's not many things that you can say about that on the rest of the tennis tour.
It's pretty cool. And I'm with you. I think the tendency to lean on chalk is strong, and I have it on the men's side, especially. Even though I don't know if Yannick and Carlos will both be in that semifinal, I feel like we'll see a familiar face lift the trophy at the end. That being said, on the women's side, holy cow, are the stars aligning for another Bianca Andreescu magic run? Leylah Fernandez, potentially as well, who's looked good in recent weeks. It's going to be fun. Bush, anything else regarding the draw before we get into parting shots?
I think just to note that Katie Boulder's win in Nottingham was a big deal, obviously for her, getting that title, and also it's just good for English tennis and British tennis as well that you have another player winning, obviously at a local tournament and going into the grass court season. There's enough intrigue here, I think, from a British tennis perspective that we will at least see some of these players make a run. It doesn't feel like everyone's going out in round one, put it that way.
I hear that. All right. When we come back after the break, we'll hit parting shots, some Olympic news, some horrible social media updates, and more coming up after the break.
Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. It is time for parting shots. Let's kick things off with some news that came out about 10 days ago, which was that Rafa Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz will be playing doubles together at the Olympics. Ellipses, maybe. So they confirmed they're playing. Is Rafa Nadal going to be there? That's the real question, Dev. We will wait and see on that one. He's certainly not going to be at Wimbledon, but this is an intriguing pair. If they are both fit, what chances do you give them?
Ooh. Say 40%, based on aura alone. And this is Jude Bellingham recency bias. So based on aura alone, I feel like the combination will lift them beyond some teams that maybe are better doubles teams, but just because they have it. But they'll meet their match later on, once they meet a Skupski, perhaps.
Interesting. Watch this space. We'll see what happens at the Olympics. We've got to get through Wimbledon first. Got to get through the Euros first.
What's your number?
Of them winning the doubles?
Yeah.
Not very high. I think the last time we saw Rafa Nadal, he could barely walk on a tennis court.
That's fair. So lower 10, than mine.
5
okay.
maybe, something around that.
All right. 40% seems a bit outlandish now.
Yeah, significantly lower.
But we'll keep going.
You mentioned in the first segment the riddle of the knee in terms of Novak Djokovic, will he, won't he play at Wimbledon? We can also extend that to Aryna Sabalenka. Not particularly doing well going into this tournament. I have mentioned it a few times. I think it's very open as a tournament. What do you think is the reason for so many injuries this season? Because we've seen a lot of high-profile stuff that's happening. Do you think there's anything that's going on here, or do you think it's just one of those things based on the calendar?
I mean, I think that just some of the quotes from Sabalenka here, it's like I don't know how much time you really have, to rehab something fully, given the never stopping nature of the tennis calendar, and the risk you take of missing massive tournaments to really get something right. Like, can you heal something to 80% of the way and kind of be like, okay, this is enough, I guess, because I have to play, I have to be there, and it does feel like that's kind of what she's doing, right? Like she's managing this, she's aware that she's not going to be 100% doing all of the rehab, the physio, but at a certain point, it's not going to be 100%, and I wonder if that's kind of across the board, and definitely more so maybe for the players who do not have the luxury of the traveling team of doctors and physio. Like, it just doesn't seem like a sport conducive to true rehab unless you're able to step away for 6 months, and give that up.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's quite an interesting parallel, isn't it? Just coming out the back of watching the NHL playoffs where no one's missing any games, right? No one, there's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
no time to rest or anything. You're playing through broken arms, broken legs, anything you can possibly. If you can just strap them up and go, you're fine. Maybe that's the same in the tennis calendar. You might have a little bit. It's a bit less extreme, but it still kind of feels that way, just given how hectic the travel is. So let's pivot from players who won't be playing to players who also won't be playing. Well, terrible segue, but we'll keep going. So one of the stories that the British media was keeping their eye on was Hannah Klugman, who was 15, and she lost in the final round of qualifying. I think this one would have been a cool story, not least because she's a good hope for British tennis. I'm going to suspect that you did not watch a whole lot of Hannah Klugman play, but I think we might see a bit more of her in the future, Dev.
Awesome. Yeah. I watched a bit of qualifying because I was following Marina Stalkic, the Canadian, who won her match against another Great Britain player, which was awesome. But anytime you see like a youngster like this pop up in qualifying, you're like, gotta write this name down just in case, save it for later. It is a bit just funny to like zoom out a bit and try to think of what I was doing when I was 15 and whether Wimbledon qualifying even entered my mind as something that was possible. But awesome.
Yeah, we should never actually bring up on this podcast what the pair of us were doing at 15. That might not be
I was playing it extremely poorly, but I was playing it.
Devang and Simon was in the final round of qualifying when he was 15. Shock. No one actually knew that. You mentioned Marina Stalkic. She will be there. She will be playing her first Wimbledon. She got through the qualifiers. I think she's 19, right? So she's still a teenager. Another in the conveyor belt and the factory of young Canadians coming through. This one also a very cool story, Dev.
Yeah, someone who has definitely flashed before, and yeah, 2004 birth date. I think there's a I don't want to like say like there's titles coming or anything like that, but I do think there is a high floor, a high ceiling, and a reasonable floor where the fundamentals are there, and it looks like at 19 she's put together a really solid game, and to make it through this kind of qualifying where you're really having to put it out there. There's no hiding. Fully merited. It'll be awesome to see what she can do here. You remember at the Billie Jean King Cup Finals last year, she was big too for Canada, helping them win that title. So awesome to see her in the main draw.
Before we pivot into bollocks, I will quickly do a quick piece of housekeeping that Jannik Sinner is, since the last time we spoke, now the world number one. There was a video released by the ATP Tour which welcomed him to the club, featuring a bunch of former world number ones, a bunch of players that I hadn't seen talk or been involved, or I guess been around the tour or been just highlighted for a while. It was cool seeing Ilya Nastase, Yevgeny Kafelnikov, Guga Kuerten. There was a ton. Andre Agassi, of course, sitting backwards in a chair, which is always entertaining. Andy Roddick was in there. So it was a long list of players. I think the funniest one was Danny Medvedev in that list, who was welcoming Jannik to the club and then saying, "I'll see you on the court in a few days," which was, yes, that is how things work when you're still an active player. But it was still cool nonetheless.
Agassi feels like we're going to see a lot more of him now. I guess the kids are out of school or out of the house, so he's out here. seen a lot of Andre. Really cool. I kind of like that. Like some of them were like awkward, kind of like Pat Rafter was a bit awkward, but like funny in a way, like because he was there for like 20 minutes and he referenced that. I like that. Really cool. Really cool. Seems a bit random. Did they do this for Alcaraz? That no.
I don't think they did do it for Alcaraz. Yeah, you mentioned Pat Rafter. There was Leighton Hewitt was in
Yeah.
there as well.
So like, why?
There was
Why?
a lot of players.
What? Yeah, he was the youngest too, right? So
It's a strange reminder that it's been a while.
it has. Tennis Reddit also claiming that because the ATP president's Italian, that's why they made this video. Which you know what? On the level of tennis Reddit stuff, that's not the worst thing I've heard of. So we'll take it.
Ah, yes, indeed. So let's say that's all the tennis, other than the Roger Federer documentary, which we'll come on to in a second. So Stefanos Tsitsipas posting TradWife content was not on my bingo card of things that I was expecting to see. I don't really know how to throw to you on this one, other than to say, what the fuck is he thinking? The man is clearly not very deep and clearly not very smart either.
Yeah, and like I thought like the conversation in our Discord about this was really good. Also because like I think my first thought was like, what an idiot, what a moron. Like, is he dumb? Yes, potentially. What is he learning? What is he reading? But I think that's where it kind of went next, where it was more like, what do you think Stefanos is like consuming media wise? And I wonder like he's probably definitely not alone in the sense of like a professional athlete. I mean like anyone his age generally, I feel like there's certain things that you are looking at or consuming your friends are sending you. So like that kind of makes me think, oh, like this is a generational thing because I am seeing way more of this kind of bullshit from people younger than me, which is super fucked, I think. So there's that, and then there's the idea that like, as he not flame out, because again, he's done incredible things. I'm like, he's had a career that 1% of people less can be so lucky to enjoy, but maybe the idea of him not reaching any sort of like pinnacle with these other guys here has maybe leaded him away into this curious influencer sphere of like, I can be someone who speaks for the masses, racket be damned, and I'm going to run with it. Wouldn't be surprised if that's also a lane he tries to go towards.
Good Lord, Dev. I think fresh off the back, since the last time we spoke of the European elections as well, where you have a bunch of 18-year-olds voting for fascists and voting for far rights, which is, a problematic turn of events that I certainly didn't have on my own personal bingo card. Sort of feel in this weird position at the age of 35 where I have people in their 70s, like a generation or two older than me, who were, very right wing. And now, seemingly on the flip side of that, people who are 20 years younger than me also voting and becoming very right wing as well. Sort of feel trapped in the middle here in some capacity. Hopefully, we're proved wrong about that. And everyone can kind of get their shit together and we can make the world slightly better. So we don't go down that road for a bunch of 18-year-olds again, Dev.
For real. And not to say like everyone in that age group or teens are like this at all. And I think that's the other aspect of trying not to be so cynical about things and thinking about the people under 30 who are going to contribute to society and do so many amazing things, not like blanketing them with awful cynicism and gloom. Like, let's not do that. But also, what the hell? What are these guys watching? What are they consuming? Good Lord. It's upsetting.
Yeah. No, I still believe in kids. I really do. I'm definitely not going to go down the road of just like the kids, for goodness sake. It's on us, right? I think if a bunch of teenagers and 20-year-olds are voting for fascists, then we have failed them. It's not the other way around. Like, yes, we can have an expectation they're going to do slightly better and don't come in, don't end up in that direction. But we have not created a world and not created an environment for them where they can hopefully find some better politics. Let's finish parting shots with the Roger Federer documentary, 12 Final Days, came out. I am yet to see this. I have seen a lot of social media content around it, including Roger Federer reacting to his own documentary, which I thought was very strange on a number of levels. Have you seen the documentary yet, or have you seen any content around it?
I've seen content around it, including his kids wearing an Arsenal kit. I guess Thierry Henry gave that, which is awesome. I was like, what? How? but then that was cool. I'll be honest, Bush. I emotionally, I don't think I'm ready to watch it, and not to get too deep here, but like a lot of stuff has happened the last month or two, and this was coming out like right on my birthday, and I kind of wasn't ready to be maybe that emotionally shook again, even though it was something so trivial as sport. I knew how much this event like phased me, and I feel like going back to it now would have shooken me or shaken me again, even though I think it'll be cathartic to watch. So I haven't watched it yet. I'm kind of scared to be honest, but I've seen a lot of the stuff around it. It looks good, to be honest. I'm curious about it for sure, but yeah, a bit afraid if that makes sense.
Me as well, in a weird capacity. I'm looking forward to watching it. I will watch it when I get back from vacation, but for the time being, I'll just enjoy the, what should we call it, the high amounts of content that have been released around it. They certainly know how to market this, which is saying something. That wraps up parting shots. Let's go to 2 challenges remaining. Would you like me to go first, or would you like to take the lead on this one?
You can go first this time.
Okay, so it's been a rough, let's say, a few months in terms of my sporting fandom, having seen Leeds United lose in a playoff final, which was pretty rough, and then seeing the Edmonton Oilers lose in Game 7. Whatever. Like that's part of sport, right? There's winners and there's losers, and you're not going to see your own team win every time. In fact, it makes it even more special when they do win. But I think the one thing that stood out to me more than anything else was the sort of the message that I sent you afterwards. It was a realization of how fleeting these moments are when the teams that you support are actually good and actually make runs or actually are competing. Is that it's just a kind of call to enjoy that when it does happen, and not get, not shit on teams, not like get down on things when they can do, because you don't get many opportunities for this to happen. So I think that was the one thing that sort of stood out to me from that. Yes, very sad and obviously disappointed, while at the same time, like, just I'm kind of happy that you got to enjoy it, at least to see a team be good for a while. It doesn't happen very often.
No, that's really well said. And like especially like recently, I feel like the last year's Arsenal season, I had a hard time enjoying large swaths of it because I was unable to like remove myself from thinking about like Man City and what it would take to catch them, and I really regret that because there were some fun moments in there that I don't think I appreciated for what they were. And I think that you nailed it, Bush. Mine's kind of related, and it came to mind because we're watching the Euros, but it also, I feel like this is now a thing that's just a lot more common and didn't happen when we were younger, but also I think the media landscape and everything is obviously way different. But at these tournaments, it does kill me now to watch them and see people criticizing certain players because they play on teams that you don't like, or and like going further down the rabbit hole regarding that. I think we see it in all sports, especially during these Euros. I've been just holding my head, like, what is going on here? And in some ways, I get it, and I think there is that, like, I don't know, like claiming you're on the ground floor of liking a player or knowing who is good first. But it is truly messed up to me. Like, I almost crave idiotic nationalism as opposed to this, because it is almost impossible to watch games without, I feel like, people taking things out of context or trying to bury other players that they don't like simply because they played for a team you don't like, rather than actually take a look at what's happening on the field. And I don't know if that's something that you've noticed as well, or it's me trying to protect Declan Rice at all costs.
Well, you could probably blame the coach before you blame Declan Rice on this one, but that's another story for another time.
And the players, the old players. Paul Scholes putting an IG story out being like, hey, if you pass the ball forward, maybe you'd win. I'm like, what have you done on an international level, Paul Scholes? What have any of these jokers done on the international level? It's nuts.
I mean, far be it for me to stand here or sit here and do a defense of Gareth Southgate, but the man is he is a proven winner when it comes to the national team. And I don't mean that like literally not winning tournaments, but having the highest success rate of any England manager ever. Like, it's not attractive. It is not good to watch. It is boring. It is all that sort of stuff, but it's proven successful. And I think it's, as long as they keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? I guess maybe that's the thought to end on, which is ultimately it works And you can get away with playing like that as long as you win. And I think the moment that you don't play like that, I think you see this often in terms of big clubs or who have a particular playing style, Real Madrid being one of those, right, where the expectation is to play attacking football constantly. And if a manager comes in and doesn't want to do that, then they'll give you a really short leash on it. If you play well and you win, then that's fine. And if you start to lose, then yeah, it's done at that point.
Let's leave it there. The Euros made me irrationally angry, Simon. Even as Canada is in the quarterfinals of Copa America. I never thought I would say that. That is legitimately true. So screw the Euros. Turn on Copa America. Canada, Venezuela. I think it'll be Venezuela next Friday. And Wimbledon. We haven't done our picks yet, so let's do them now.
Oh my God.
This is impossible. I legitimately don't. You're better off throwing a dart at a board. But for the sake of trying to remember this at the end, who do you got?
Oh my God. Why do you have to ask me this question?
Just to end on a tennis note. Is that so much to ask on Open Era? The tennis podcast?
Can you go first? I have no... I need to prepare an answer here.
On the women's side, would it be too wishful thinking to say, you know what, after everything Ons does it, she gets it this time? I say yes, she does. If it's this wide open, why not the 10th seed? So I'll go on the women's side. On the men's side, because I was kind of hopeless when I thought it's going to be someone familiar to win this, let's go off the board. If it is going to be not one of the, let's say, top 5 seeds, give me Hubie or catch. Sentimental picks on both sides. You heard it first.
Double H is a good pick. I think he has a good chance of running deep here. He has a decent drawer as well. Tommy Paul is another one, obviously in the challenging section of the draw. I'll pick Alcaraz on the men's side. Fuck the women's side. I have no idea. Let's take JPEG.
JPEG. There we go. JPEG and Ons on the women's side. Alcaraz, Hubie Hurkacz on the men's side. Surely one of those people will not win, will they? Tune in to find out on Wimbledon starting on Monday. We will wrap it up there. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/open era. Join us there where we're talking tennis all the time, especially during a slam. Should be some good fun in the Discord. So join us there to support the show. Get it ad-free on Sundays as well. For producer Greg on the 1s and 2s, and for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next week.